From the wild landscapes of Zimbabwe to the vibrant streets of Miami, my life has been a tapestry of beauty, challenge, and growth. I now understand through Germanic New Medicine how my biology was quietly responding and adapting to each experience. I grew up with deep, loving, affectionate parents, and a father whose drinking sometimes pushed him into constellations. A pattern I can now fully forgive and see through the biological lens of GNM. This is not a story of what went wrong. It is a story of becoming and of sharing what I have learned so that others may find meaning in their own journey. In those early years, my whole biology lived in harmony with nature. Growing up outdoors without screens or noise, I felt in a deep parasympathetic state of safety, healing, and trust in life. Every barefoot adventure, every climb through the hills, every encounter with wild animals strengthened my body's confidence and created a steady rhythm between my body, brain, and psyche. These experiences built real biological resilience, teaching adaptability instead of fear, and giving me a lasting sense of trust and connection with the natural world. I was born in Harare, then called Salisbury. Life was simple and warm, even though my father worked nights. One night, my mother faced an attempted break-in while we were tiny. My grandmother arrived with her car lights cutting through the dark as several men tried to enter the house. That shock became my first scare-fright conflict, the kind of imprint that in a child may later show as laryngeal or bronchial symptoms. We later moved to a small town called Risco, which felt like paradise with red earth and endless outdoor freedom. At home, though, my father's drinking sometimes changed his personality, and my parents argued. At times, things were physical. That is when my digestive issues began. I now see this as an early indigestible morsel conflict. I could not emotionally digest the tension at home and silently swallowed what I could not express. Around age 10, we left for South Africa. Just before the move, my father had a serious car accident. He survived, but we lost the car and had to travel by bus to South Africa, leaving behind our beloved dog of 12 years. The goodbye of friends and a place we loved was my first deep separation conflict and grief that still lives softly in my heart. When we moved to South Africa, everything familiar disappeared almost overnight. At 10, my nervous system was still shaping its sense of safety and identity, and suddenly I was in Germiston, an industrial city of concrete, noise, and fear-based news. From a Germanic New Medicine perspective, this shift triggered several biological conflicts at once. I experienced a deep separation conflict from the land, the animals, and the freedom I loved. My dry, flaky skin and short-term memory loss reflected the body numbing and forgetting what it had been torn away from. The constant stories of violence and our frightening weekend trips to Johannesburg, with my father drinking and us driving lost at night, activated layers of fear and powerlessness. My chest tightened. I wheezed with exertion. My vigilance never switched off. Asthma, self-devaluation in my bones and muscles, water retention, hair pulling, nail biting, allergies, and memory loss all make sense to me now as biological adaptations. The conflicts show up as frontal fear, paranoia, a bite conflict, kidney collecting tubules, and sensory constellations, working to help me survive an environment that felt unsafe and unpredictable at the time. Looking back through the lens of GNM, I no longer see these patterns as random disorders. They were my body's intelligent responses, creative survival strategies of a sensitive child trying to stay safe when life changed too fast. When we moved from Germiston to coastal Richards Bay, it felt like I could finally breathe again. The sea air, the wild animals, the trees, and the outdoor freedom eased years of tension, and my body shifted from constant stress into healing, into vagatonia, which showed up as deep fatigue and bone pain. In GNM, the bones mirror self-worth, and my exhaustion and aching joints reflected how long I had felt pressured and devalued. The same theme lived in my teeth, from endless childhood cavities to extreme dental work and extractions later on in Mexico. My mouth carried a bite conflict of wanting to stand up for myself, but feeling unable to. The pain, infections, and disgust around my teeth created a powerful stink conflict and kept the original bite conflict looping. Danny Carroll's bioswitch mantras helped interrupt that loop, calm my nervous system, and restore a sense of safety, and over time the pain and swelling eased. Around 20, I left Africa to travel and work overseas. Those years were full of adventure, yet my unresolved conflicts still surfaced. From a GNM perspective, this season of life showed me that healing is not linear. Changing countries or circumstances is not always enough. True healing begins when the body finally feels safe enough to release what is held for years. When I first arrived in London, staying with family gave me a brief sense of safety. Once I was on my own in cold hostels and unsafe areas, the old patterns returned. I developed a compulsive eating disorder that I now understand as a morsel conflict in GNM, where the psyche feels deprived of something essential like love, stability, or belonging. I would binge on sweets and then feel nauseated and guilty. This reflected a fear-disgust conflict with my biology trying to satisfy a deep hunger for safety, while also wanting to reject what felt frightening or too much. The cravings for sugar were not weakness, they were my body's way of keeping my blood sugar up to face perceived danger. During this time, I still bit my nails and carried chronic constipation and IBS from indigestible morsel conflicts, and struggled with bone and joint pain from self-devaluation. Smoking became a way to self-regulate through deep breathing. I needed to take more oxygen, so replacing that with a cigarette would help. My paranoia constellation stayed active, keeping me on high alert and worsening allergies, fatigue, and memory gaps. Later, in Sydney, Australia, I remember working in a restaurant where I had to use a till. I became confused and couldn't work it, something I'd done so many times before. Through GNM, I now see this as a post-sensory cortex constellation, where short-term memory loss protects us from the overwhelming separation and stress. Looking back, my binge eating, sugar cravings, fatigue, allergies, and confusion were not random or proof that something was wrong with me. They were intelligent survival adaptations. The body never turns against us. It responds to unspoken emotions of I am unsafe, alone, and not enough. True healing begins when there is safety, belonging, and compassion. Once the psyche feels safe, the biology no longer needs to stay in survival mode. I traveled through the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, and the Caribbean, and spent six months on a kibbutz in Israel. I was drawn to the rhythm of land and community. Everywhere I went, I noticed the same pattern. In rural places, families shared meals and daily life under open skies. Children ran barefoot and inventive, and there was a calm, grounded joy. In crowded cities, whether wealthy or poor, I felt a heavier atmosphere of tension, sadness, and dis-ease. My longing for simplicity in nature was really my nervous system seeking parasympathetic safety, the biological medicine of soil, birdsong, and real food. Travel also brought deep insecurity, crossing borders on Zimbabwean and South African passports during the apartheid era. I was often treated with suspicion. In Greece, I was detained, jailed, overnight, then sent back to Turkey with no phone or money, sleeping in a bus station and fending off unwanted attention. In several countries, men followed me, and once a man entered my room while I slept. These moments echoed old themes of abandonment, fear, and hypervigilance, creating the frontal fear and the paranoia constellation. Yet they were interwoven with healing experiences in the villages, where people lived so close to the earth and to each other. My body constantly moved between stress and repair, showing me that healing rarely unfolds in straight lines, but in waves of safety, danger, and restoration. After years of traveling, I met my husband in India, and we eventually settled in Miami. When my first son was born in 2003, everything changed. His home birth was difficult, and he landed in the hospital with Group B strep and jaundice. I was terrified and pressured into bleach washes and antibiotics just in case. Now through GNM, I see his jaundice and even my own symptoms as healing phases, not medical failures. After each birth, I developed severe hemorrhoids. I was embarrassed at the time, but later learned that hemorrhoids reflect the healing of an identity conflict. It fit perfectly. I had spent my whole life wondering who I was and where I belonged. Becoming a mother finally answered that question. Once my identity settled, my body moved into repair, which showed up as the swelling and the hemorrhoids. They were not a sign that something was wrong, but that something had resolved. Motherhood grounded me biologically. It gave me a system, a clear purpose, and helped me to see postpartum symptoms as proof of a deep inner shift rather than something to fear. When we look at Group B strep through GNM, a very different picture appears. Instead of seeing bacteria as invaders, we understand them as nature's cleanup crew. When a pregnant woman has recently resolved emotional conflicts around belonging, rejection, or uncertainty, her reproductive tissues moves into repair. Cells that grew during the conflict active phase now need to be broken down and soften. Bacteria like Group B strep, with that process, they help. They're not attacking the mother or the baby. They're supporting her body to be ready, open, and resilient for birth. In this light, the presence of GBS is a sign that healing is underway and not that something is wrong. Even if the baby carries the bacteria, he is participating in the shared repair on the behalf of his mother. And when a woman understands this, her nervous system often settles. She may shift from my body is failing me to my body is wise and something meaningful is happening. That trust allows her to soften, breathe, and meet birth with more confidence and reverence rather than fear. During our years in the Dominican Republic, we lived in a way that felt deeply healing and connected. After my second son was born, we moved there to build a small organic farm with my parents. With the help of local villagers, we created gardens and orchards, rescued animals, and shared daily life in community. My body grew up barefoot, wild, learning to nourish the soil, plant seeds, harvest food, and live by nature's rhythm. We cleaned with simple ingredients and avoided synthetic products, converted our pool to salt water, and I immersed myself into herbology, natural horsemanship, and sustainable living. It was a return to simplicity that healed something profound in me. At the same time, my body revealed another layer of my story. I became extremely sensitive to chemicals, detergents, perfumes, and fertilizers. Even faint smells make me feel ill. Through GNM, I now understand this as a scent constellation, a biological program where the olfactory relays heightened sensitivity to protect against perceived danger, often linked to past emotional tracks. My joint, muscle, and bone pain continued as expressions of lingering self-devaluation conflicts. Those quiet questions of, am I strong enough? Can I keep doing this? Even in paradise, the body remembered. Yet in the soil, the sun, the horses, and my children's laughter, I experienced a deep depth of healing and connection with nature, family, and myself that still lives in me today. 7 years later, we moved back to the United States for the twins' birth and settled on a farm in California. The land was bare at first, and the volunteers and 2 employees, we planted olives, grapes, and slowly brought back the soil to life through biodynamic farming. It was beautiful and meaningful, but also demanding. Soon after arriving, we began to experience skin rashes and recurring staph infections. Through the lens of GNM, I now see the rashes as separation conflicts from leaving behind friends, community, and the familiarity of our life in the Dominican Republic. The skin, our boundary organ, was simply expressing the feeling of being torn away. As we settled and began to feel more at home, the rashes faded. The staph infections reflected attack and fear conflicts. The land was full of rattlesnakes and black widow spiders, and in the beginning we had a constant fear that they would bite the children. Even my attempts to squeeze out the pus while the kids resisted created new micro-attack imprints. Only when we brought in chickens and guinea fowl and cats, I stopped fearing, and all the infections resolved. The spiders also fed a fear-disgust conflict, contributing to waves of hypoglycemia, nausea, dizziness, and sugar cravings, as my biology prepared energy to face perceived threats. Inside, I was profoundly fatigued. I had been breastfeeding for 9 years, raising 4 children, regenerating a farm, and barely sleeping. Beneath my love for my family, I carried a persistent self-devaluation theme of not being able to do enough. I'm not strong enough. My bones, muscles, and connective tissues reflected this through weakness, pain, and exhaustion. I felt like I had been carrying a heavy body around. Blurred vision and a sense of not being able to focus emerged from my paranoia constellation. A chronic vigilance around unseen dangers like toxins or EMFs, and my memory lapses returned as a part of post-sensory cortex constellation. Hiding my phone from the kids and then forgetting where I put it was not a failure. It was my brain protecting me from overstimulation. Even in this rich, meaningful chapter, my biology was still faithfully mirroring my inner world. By that point, I had been studying health and nutrition for over 19 years and had become a certified gut and psychology coach. Yet I was still searching outside myself for answers. The GAPS course gave a surge of self-esteem and purpose. I overhauled our entire way of eating, and it felt good, not only because the food was nourishing, but because my mind finally had something disciplined and healthy to hold on to. It was a distraction. Meat stocks, broths, ferments, and fats are deeply ancestral foods. The problem was not the food itself, it was the rigidity and the fear around it. Looking back through GNM, I can see how strict rules created new conflicts. Starvation conflicts when food was restricted, bite conflicts when the kids could not eat what they wanted, stink and annoyance conflicts around social events and forbidden foods. My son's non-alcoholic fatty liver at 10 years old showed me that the body responds not just to nutrients, but to the emotional climate around food. Pressure, scarcity, tension, their sinus and breathing patterns, their crowded teeth and their resentment showed how these conflicts were written into their tissues. I did not repeat this with the twins, and their teeth developed differently, which confirmed for me that this was not genetic. That experience humbled and softened me. I still believe in real food, organic soil, and avoiding lifeless fast food. However, I no longer believe in rigid restriction. Now I focus on relationship with the body, with the earth, and with the food itself. I allow my children to keep their Halloween candy, and I eat outside the home without fear. Our bodies are sanctuaries that respond to nourishment, safety, and emotional freedom. When good food is paired with ease rather than deprivation, the whole system has a chance to truly thrive. Over time, my sensitivities expanded from smells and foods to what is called EMF sensitivity. I could feel when someone entered the house with a cell phone. I would experience dizziness, brain fog, agitation, and short-term memory loss. From a GNM perspective, these were long-term fear and separation attacks as well as paranoia. It created the hypersensitivity of all those years. My nervous system was constantly scanning for those threats. An Alzheimer's summit about electromagnetic radiation made me even more afraid. We converted the whole house to Ethernet, trying to eliminate every signal. The more I tried to create safety, the more my biology stayed in conflict. This continued for almost 10 years and eventually led me to study with Energetic Wellness School. I did Dr. Joe Dispenza's work in biogeometry. That was a turning point. I began to see that my sensitivities were tracks of old conflicts replaying through new triggers. I had changed my environment, not my perception. I also saw how my fear had passed to my children. My anxiety around toxins and food, how it contributed to those stink, bite, sinus, mucosa conflicts, and food aversions. Restriction and tension around healthy eating shaped their breathing, their teeth. Now, after years of integrating GNM and biogeometry, I no longer aim to eliminate every trigger. I focus on changing my relationship with them. I can live in Miami with 5G, eat imperfect food, and still feel grounded. Peace does not come from total control of the environment. It comes from trusting the body's intelligence. When we stop fearing toxins, EMFs, or foods, and understand these reactions as old tracks of fear, the biology is free to leave survival and return to balance. Healing begins not when the world becomes safe, but when we feel safe within it. Through GNM medicine, I began to see that the real conflict inside me, by choosing to settle in Miami, it was a choice to return to my family and to choose love over fear. The move also stirred a deep abandonment and refugee feeling. My body expressed this through water weight from kidney collecting tubule activity and sore feet reflecting self-devaluation around feeling stuck and unsupported. As I acknowledged my grief and reassured myself that I was safe, the weight and symptoms began to ease. In the city, I consciously wove nature and joy back into our daily rhythm. We walked among the mangroves, swam in the ocean, we shared family meals, and kept creativity alive through reading, art, movement, and play. I still practice Tai Chi. I do Zumba and belly dance to reconnect with my own body. As my older boys seek risk with fast cars and daring adventures, I practice trust rather than control. With less farm work, my focus has shifted to building courses and sharing this healing journey. Through it all, I see myself as the emotional anchor of the family, the mother matrix, learning to feel safe in my own mind wherever we live. Looking back from Africa to the Dominican Republic, California, and now Miami, I see one thread running through it all. We thrive when we live in rhythm with life. Early childhood conflicts echo through our later years. Yet our biology is always trying to guide us back to balance. To live in biological harmony is to trust that intelligence. Let nature teach us. Raise our children close to the earth. When we do, fear loosens its grip, and we find our way home to ourselves, each other, and the living world.